All right, well, we're back with True Footy Podcast 14. I'm joined by William Stanky Old Joyce. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Oh, I thought you were talking about that guy over there.
Yeah. I don't see any other Stanky Old. And Daniel, the prostate destroyer Busher.
Oh, mate, I thought that was my nickname in like first year uni.
Yeah, it's carried on.
Oh, mate, I thought it handballed to you, to be honest.
No, it doesn't work like that. You can't handball a nickname.
Can we get...
I did, I remember. It was beautiful.
Are we still trying to avoid that for AdWords?
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to see how it
Stanky
goes.
hole and prostate.
Yeah, I'm sure the algorithm doesn't pick up stanky hole.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might have been, but yeah. Well, a bit's happened since we last did a podcast, Joycey. You've gotten yourself a degree.
Well, I haven't graduated yet, so...
Oh, yeah, you won't know.
Subject
hopefully.
to exams.
Yeah, so you're looking at Dr. Joyce right here.
And what else is new with you, Busher? Did you end up getting that kid to drop the charges?
Oh, mate, it was a great day.
You had no comeback to that.
Yeah. Mate, you're rolling me
If anything,
today.
you made it worse.
Yeah,
That was a great day.
Yeah. Drop the charges, good times.
Back out on the prowl.
Mate.
Well, speaking of interference, I was going to bring up with you boys the first topic on the agenda today is somewhat topical at the moment. It's about the way the AFL is obviously looking to change the rules of the game. We've seen recently it's come out that Hawthorn and Brisbane have apparently trialled secret training sessions, like intra-club kind of matches.
Yeah.
And they've trialled new anti-congestion rules where basically they're playing players in certain zones. And there's been a lot of bit of backlash, really, because those are the only two teams that are actually getting to trial these.
It all sounds very like espionage, like a James Bond film, like secret training sessions and like...
Yeah, those are the media's words, no
Yeah.
doubt. They've definitely blown that. But there is people pissed off, like David Koch, the chairman of Port Adelaide. He's obviously a very outspoken man, and he's come out and he's said that there's no V in AFL, and that even though Brisbane were one of the teams, but he said that it's basically unfair that these two teams are getting a chance to trial these new rules, and they're not even releasing footage or anything. They're not giving any other clubs details about the way they're looking at changing the game.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a problem? Do you think he's got a point, David Koch?
It is a bit weird. Just like, I don't know. I feel like it does give off a kind of weird vibe, but I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'd probably be a similar string of thought. Like, they've got to figure out if these rules work somehow. It's like,
Yeah, they do, but I guess the weird point is why they're not making it more transparent and releasing it to every club. I don't know why there needs to be secrecy over something like this.
still, but it's early days. They're probably like, it could be a complete dud. They don't really need to expand it until they feel like it's something they're comfortable expanding, maybe.
Yeah.
That's true.
It could be that early in development.
I think David Koch in particular is pretty pissed off. He feels as though this gives Hawthorn a 4-month advantage with regard to planning for next year. And the argument is that the recruiters of each club need to know if there's going to be rule changes, because obviously it's going to impact which players they want to recruit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What do you guys think about rule changes in general? We've seen over the last 10 years or so, they're always changing something. One thing that really annoys me is when they talk about the umpires really going to focus on something in particular in a certain week. So they're like, oh, this week we're going to focus on holding the ball, or this week we're going to focus
It's like
on...
those signs you see bloody at the side of the road. The police
Yeah.
are focusing on not wearing
on
seatbelts.
incorrect disposals, and it's just
Yeah.
like for me that just ruins consistency a little bit. I feel like they need to make the rules as consistent as possible so that umpires can so you can have a consistent results no matter who the umpire is.
These umpires think they're bloody superstars, though. I think I've mentioned it before, but that thing where Razor Ray got his name put on his boots.
Yeah.
They rate themselves a bit highly, I reckon. And then you hear even the way they talk to players, they're a bit just like...
They've got the biggest role compared to any other sport I think we've seen. I think it's because there's so much of a subjective element over a lot of football stuff, like whether the ball's deliberately out of bounds, whether he had prior opportunity, whether he ducked and tried to draw the free kick. So they do have more of an influence over the game and the way it's progressed than any other sport. Like in soccer, at least, it's much more objective. If it's offside, has he gone past the last defender and stuff like that? Obviously, you want the umpires to be. You want to see as little of them as possible, don't you?
Yeah. You don't want to notice them either way. That's probably the sign of a good umpire.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very corporate mindset that the AFL have in that they've got this notion of continually improving the game, which doesn't sound bad in essence, but we know there's a rules committee whose job is it to come up with a new rule every year.
Yeah.
So I think they're kind of forcing the issue a bit too much.
Yeah. I feel like it's definitely, some of it's like a marketing sort of ploy. I think particularly in the last few years, we've seen a lot more like American rule styles with the free agency, the substitute, things like that come in. You can definitely see we've taken things from other sports and trialled them. But again, I think it makes it hard for the umpires when they're changing rules so often, and it really makes it hard for them to consistently umpire and consistently get the same calls.
You can see sort of what the rationale behind each sort of move you just listed there is. I mean, free agency it's two-pronged. The reason behind that, it's to give players the opportunity to move to the club they want so they have more freedom. Also, it's meant to promote equalisation so other clubs can benefit from taking free agents from big clubs. Obviously, it's had the opposite effect, so that's paid off. And I think the real big thing they're narrowing on now at the moment is anti-congestion. So there's a lot of talk about how the game's pretty average at the moment. There's a lot of low-scoring games. There's so much congestion. Often you have the whole 36 players on the field in one half. And I think the rules that they're trialling now at the under-18 level is they're going to have players, for instance, I think in the under-18s recently they had to have two players each team inside the 50s at all times. So it basically stops them coming up the ground. And I think 5 in one half of the ground at the whole time. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely don't want to see a full-on zoning thing going on where you've got just forwards
netball.
restricted
You don't want to see netball.
Forwards. Yeah, no, I don't like that. But
it's hard to enforce, isn't it? I mean, you need someone watching the whole field the whole time. Maybe in a VAR rather atmosphere where they've got cameras everywhere. But I mean, how's the umpire going to?
Still, even I was just looking in the AFL app the other day, and it's got a thing where you can track where every player is on the field at the time. Like you can see how many Ks everyone just tracks them and shows you the exact location on the field. So they could use that sort of technology surely to administer it.
Although we know that using technology is going to be some teething problems, going to open up a can of worms. I mean, the score review system, for instance, that
Shambles.
we have, it's a joke. It's a very simple piece of technology, and they're still butchering it. But that's a fair point. We're more equipped for that sort of thing than we have in the past.
No, that's true, and I think there's a responsibility. This is a bit ironic coming from a Fremantle fan, but there's a responsibility on coaches to play. There should be a responsibility to play a certain style and try and play attractive, entertaining football. But again, that's really hard when the thing that keeps a coach at a club is wins and losses. It's no one at the club itself really cares how they play. If they win, they win. But there does need to be a responsibility on coaching staff to play an attractive, good style of football that's entertaining.
So I'll ask you both, what in your mind is an attractive style of football? What's your favourite kind of game? Is it a high-scoring game? Is it a contested game?
High-scoring, fast-paced. Yeah.
Shootout. I like shootouts. Yeah.
I'm the opposite. I know I'm in the minority for this, but I really love a low-scoring scrap. Probably because the high-scoring ones tend to get blown out. There's a lot more blowouts, obviously, because there's more goals. So what I think is going to happen is if we have these measures to reduce congestion, the bottom teams like Gold Coast and Carlton, maybe they'll be better next year, I don't know. It's just an example. But they're going to probably get blown out of the water a lot more, which I think will be a problem.
I think an interesting one at the moment they're talking about is shortening the games. We're noticing at the moment, especially the young teams, that good teams are piling on lots of goals in the last 10 or 15 minutes of games, when younger teams, rebuilding teams, are really tired. If you look at the score at three-quarter times, usually 20 points down, something like that, and they can very easily end with 10 goals difference between the two sides. So I know that's one they're talking about. I'm not sure about it. One of the things I do love about the game is sort of the endurance aspect. and the aspect that you have to deliver when you're tired and fatigued.
That's an excellent
point. What do you guys think?
I think that's an excellent point. I think Gold Coast are a great example. Sorry, were you about to say?
No.
I was going to say the Gold Coast in they had 3 consecutive final quarters where they scored 2 behinds across 3 final quarters.
Yeah.
And I think Paul Roos was making the point, if you look at their numbers, they just cannot cover the ground because there's so many young kids in that team. So I think I could tolerate shorter quarters. I think you'll find the players probably want that as well. Because they just obviously want less of a burden.
I think I remember Dangerfield was pushing for it not too long ago.
Yeah.
He was.
I mean, I don't think the AFL wants to shorten the season or anything like that considerably. Again, I think that's what the players want. Maybe the solution is, maybe it's idealistic, but you could use more of your team roster over the course of the year and rotate these gun players more. Yeah. For instance, you see how it happens in soccer. In the English Premier League, they play 38 games a year plus cup matches. So they end up playing like 50 games across a year. Obviously, it's stretched over a long period, but the toll on their body is enormous, and they're doing a little bit of travel. And what they do is they rotate their best players quite effectively. They often rest players against average teams. And you don't see that as much in the AFL. It's much
There's
more
probably more of a discrepancy between the bad teams and the good teams in England, though, I'm guessing. I'm not a big soccer guy, but
there is.
That's a fair point. Yep.
And also, there's a bigger season, so
and no
you could
salary
argue
cap
that
as well.
The points from a win are more important to an AFL club. I almost wouldn't mind. I mean, I'm not a general advocate for just making changes for the sake of it, but I wouldn't mind creating a larger season, more games, but shorter games with maybe 2 buys throughout the year. So something like 27, 28 games. Yep. So a longer season, you can put 2 buys in there, make the games shorter, and then I feel like, I mean, I'm not a sports scientist, so I don't know the impact on the body really, but I imagine that would be similar to the impact of playing 22 long games right now with 1 bye.
Yep. Yeah, I
and
like
then
it.
we get more football.
I like it. I think you could. It's still. They could still accommodate larger rosters, and there's the counter argument that is they're going to thin out the talent pool too much because you're going to have a lot more average players playing, and as a product, the game diminishes. But there is a lot of state level league mature players that could then get an opportunity from that because the clubs could sort of recruit more. Maybe not Tim Kelly because he's a great player already, but Hayden Schloith, for instance, who missed out in the waffle. And maybe he gets an opportunity because of this.
Yeah, I agree. I think, to be honest, I think the best VFL, best waffle, best SANFL midfielders, I don't think there's a big difference between the best of those lot and the worst of the AFL midfielders. Without meaning to pick on any AFL players, I think someone like Sam Kerridge, I don't think there'd be a big difference between him and some of the top VFL midfielders. Yeah. So why not give those guys a shot? So like you said, if you're creating the biggest roster, and as long as the team size stays the same, do you know what I mean? Yeah. You won't be, you shouldn't end up playing worse football because you've still got the same amount of good players. You've just also got bad players, arguably.
I guess it's more like if the good players get rotated out for resting. If it's a longer season, they'll probably miss a few games and then get replaced by a Shane Nelson from West Perth.
That could come back into the reserves league thing where if they had a AFL seconds for each team and then they played a curtain raiser to the other game or whatever, that could play into that with a larger roster because you'd have the amount of players necessary to field 2 teams of 22.
That's true.
I think that makes the talent pool too low. I don't think there's enough to make a second side for every team and then continue with state leagues. That would absolutely kill the waffle and the VFL. That's true. And I think it's good to have those comps still running.
There'd be a lot of footy department costs as well because the Eagles and Dockers would have to travel there with their
we'd be flying 44 guys over, Yeah.
But I think that will be the way it goes. I think it's inevitable that will happen, but whether or not it's going to be in the next 20, 30 years, I have no idea, to be honest.
Even if it's a younger sort of thing, which has also been the one floated with that idea.
That is
under 21s or something.
I don't mind that idea. I think that's a very, very common one in overseas sports. We see in soccer they have under 21s competitions, and stuff like the Olympics. So they have a tournament at the Olympics, but it's only for under 23s. So it's really, they have good competitions to develop young players without forcing them to play against like
Yeah.
a 29-year-old absolute beast of the game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Which there is like, I don't know, that we kind of play by these rules at the moment that like a 14 and a 16-year-old can't play together in the same league because there's too much difference between them. But an 18-year-old and a 31-year-old can.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There is less difference because they're not going through adolescence and things like that. But
they're both men as well, to some extent. Yeah. Obviously, there's a huge developmental difference, but
so I don't think that's a bad way to go. But and maybe if you allow the clubs to still select players from those under 21s to play seniors if they're good enough. Which
is what you'd do realistically. You'd have more youth.
Yeah.
That mean more kids get picked up, and most of these kids are on cheap deals compared to what a 22-year-old that survived his first contracts on. So you can have a lot of kids for cheap compared to what you can have these older guys for.
But it's good. I think it's good though to have conversations like this, just discussing new ways to develop the game.
It's interesting that other sports, I think we were talking about it the other night when we were watching the World Cup, that other sports don't appear to have this developmental, this idea of continually improving the sport. I was saying to Joycey when we were watching the game, I said, if I was inventing a sport now, and I am a soccer fan, so I don't want anyone to be triggered by this comment, but if I was inventing a sport like soccer, I would be more concerned with how much effort goes in, or how much time per goal there is. And as a product, it doesn't... Again, if I was designing it for the first time, I think it could have been done better. You know what I mean? And obviously it makes, as Joycey said, the drama of each goal is so much more exciting because you have to wait 45 minutes for it. But soccer's never gone down that route of trying to people please, it seems. They've always just let the game sort of... Which
I agree with, because even with footy, I wouldn't like the idea of too many changes to footy, realistically, but generally speaking.
Basketball has developed, hasn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, counter that, like the 3-point shot only came in 1980, and now it's the biggest part of the game, guys.
Exactly.
Teams, if you're the best 3-point shooting team, you're in with a chance.
That's true, yeah. And maybe one day we'll have 9-point goals in AFL, and then we'll look back and think, oh, remember when we didn't have those?
Yeah. I don't necessarily think the 9-point thing would be bad. It encourage guys goal kicking, especially from distance, to work on their distance goal kicking.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I don't love it, but I don't really have a strong argument for why I don't like it. I guess I'm just a traditionalist at heart.
Yeah, I am a traditionalist at heart as well, but that's one thing I probably wouldn't mind.
I think
compared to some of this perhaps congestion stuff, even though you don't want to make it too zony AFL, I don't feel.
I think one of the big things soccer relies on is history and past of the game. The game's changed that little that you can compare a game in 1935 to a game now. And people from the older generation, 90-year-olds, can watch a game now and get still as much joy as when they were 20. Whereas we have this thing in AFL where people over a certain age are going, it was, it was so much better back in
my day.
And
they're
I
definitely
feel
romanticising it.
Because of all the rule changes, the difference between the game now and 30 years ago is actually massive.
I think it's a lot better.
So do I, but we're from this generation. I think there's a very high chance when we get to that age, we'll say the same thing about the current generation we're in now.
It's a fair point,
Yeah.
Probably change a lot quicker, at a quicker rate.
Yeah.
When they introduced hoverboard goal. Like, this is stuffed, man.
Yeah, they'll do something stupid to it.
Or like involuntary euthanasia for the losing side.
That would be the Japanese AFL league.
Yeah.
Fall on your sword if you lose.
Shame killings. What about a proposed rule change, and this is a bit of a dramatic one, and I can see traditionalists hating it, but the introduction of something like a red card or a sin bin.
This is a rule change that I'm actually for. If someone, my mind immediately goes to the Barry Hall Brent Staker incident. There's no way someone can just be allowed to keep playing after doing something like what Barry Hall did there. But I think if they are going to introduce a red card system, I think it has to. I think it's can't be thrown about willy nilly. You know what I mean?
You'd need a yellow as well if you're going to bring a red.
You need a yellow for a warning. I feel like that's one Toby Green would just rack up. He'd rack up like 100 yellows in a season just for being a little,
Hellraiser.
Little giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be something that's a last resort, I think. There's probably only a handful of occasions over the time I've been watching footy where it's warranted one. The Barry Hall one, definitely. The other one that springs to mind is Alistair Lynch in his last game in the grand final. Now, we know... Well, actually, I found out today. I didn't even know this. Shows how much I know. But it's a double suspension for anything you do in the grand final. But obviously, it being his last game, it is a 2004
Because
grand
didn't
final.
he get a 21-game suspension and never served it because he retired or
Plus,
something?
I can't remember what he got.
I remember it was something hectic like that.
Yeah, it would have been something hectic because he was just literally punching on with people.
Yeah.
And that was in a grand final, and the rare instances where that would be the case, but you'd want a red card in this instance. Like, this is a hypothetical and extreme scenario, but what if you're playing in the grand final, someone doesn't care if they get rubbed out, and they literally punch someone and concuss them in the opening minute, and the other team has to play a man down.
Yeah.
That's a scenario that we can eradicate, even though it's not super likely, but there's no cost really to introducing a red card.
Well, we saw the Dermot Brereton one where in the 80s where I think a player, I'm not sure who, ran across the square and just like at the bounce in the grand final and like smashed him in the jaw. I think he broke his jaw. So I think for things like that, it should be introduced. However, I will say this might sound pretty like barbaric, but I do love in grand final just when both teams get a real big punch on. Like,
Fair enough, yeah.
And
That's not barbaric.
It kind of adds to the contest.
In those situations, you probably wouldn't pull out the red cards where it's like a multi-guy brawl, but if it's like one guy that sniped another guy, like cheap shot at him or whatever, then...
You don't want people getting too hurt.
Yeah.
You want them like punching on whatever. I mean, it's fair enough if no one's getting knocked out.
It kind of doesn't make sense, I think, the system at the moment where if a player punches someone in the first quarter, they're free to play the rest of that game, but then maybe not the 2 weeks after that.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't really make sense to me.
It's just a small change we can make, I think, that could improve it. And I just don't think there's that much of a cost. Yeah. If you have a melee situation where the umpire's raising red cards like 3 at a time, that's obviously something we want to avoid. We never want that to happen, unless it's like extremely warranted. But
yeah, I think it could be good for junior and amateur level sport as well.
I think
stop really bad.
I think it does exist in
incidents.
Amos footy.
Yeah,
it does.
And I also like for juniors and amateurs, like when the umps have power to send even spectators off the field. So like we see all the time in amateurs and juniors, like parents and spectators just being absolute tosses to the umpires. And the umpires need to be given as much power as possible to sort of get protection and
even in basketball they kick you out of the entire building, not just like you get kicked out of the
soccer,
building.
Out of the stadium. Like I think that's something AFL could potentially do with it as well.
For the sake of a seamless segue, would Jeremy Cameron have received a red card on Saturday afternoon?
See, that's a tough one because it was not intentional, but it's as bad as you can get.
It's going to technically be deemed intentional.
The fact that...
but I know what you're saying.
Well, he didn't... He was looking away, so... But the fact that he jumped up, turned his head away, and still threw the arm out, I think was really bad. It's pretty much as bad as you can do because it's very negligent.
Michael Christian said, and we are recording this before he goes to the tribunal tonight, Jeremy Cameron, but Michael Christian, the match review officer, did say that they will deem any instance where someone enters a contest with their elbow up as intentional. So technically it's not necessarily like he intended. I certainly don't think he meant to nail him in the head. He hit him absolutely flush.
But you can't just throw your arm up.
Yeah. Somewhat similar to the Fife thing.
That's why Fife got done.
That's true.
In the end.
Yeah, it's a horrible instance for Harris Andrews, the poor guy. I mean, we talk about things we want to change about our game. If there was one thing, and I know it's impossible, that you could take away from the sport, it would be concussions. Because I think we see in American sport it's becoming a real problem with players after their career ends. And now we're seeing it increasingly. I don't know if we're diagnosing it more or people are getting concussed more, but I feel like there's a
lot more awareness, I think.
Yeah,
like in the 80s gridiron, there's so many of those guys that are just mushy-brained, can barely function because they've been concussed that badly.
This could be a problem for our game.
I feel like, I don't really want it, but I feel like it's kind of inevitable that down the track, some sort of head protection will be worn by players.
I 100% agree. I reckon it actually could be closer than you think. I reckon maybe 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mind it because, as I said, it's the one thing I wish we could take from our game. ACLs are cruel, but concussions are far more serious, really.
Yeah.
And ACLs are a lot harder to prevent than concussions, surely.
That's true, yeah.
Like ACLs are most of the time freak accidents. Like they're just not preventable.
I guess I just meant in the injustice of the sport.
They don't really have obviously the mental capacity to damage that a concussion does, an ACL.
Yeah, that's true. That's it. Yeah. But the only reason I threw that comparison out there is because they're probably the two things that you can't take away from the sport that you wish you could, because they're such a cruel. Well, the ACLs are so cruel, and obviously concussions are really a massive problem. Like it's affecting players' careers.
Interesting though that the ACL has only really been a problem in more recent times, and I've seen a few studies done that suggest that's because of the workload of players now compared to back in the day. Back in the day, they'd do maybe like 3 or 4 training sessions a week and play the game on the weekend, and that's it. And now their bodies are so finely tuned that it's very easy for them to come down with muscle and with different joint injuries because their bodies are just put under so much pressure.
And it's probably the more acrobatic-y sort of flying, more people jumping for grabs and stuff as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Like basketball, it's always been a thing, ACLs.
Yeah.
And footy, you're starting to see guys launching in the packs more aerobic, like in the air.
Well, I think that's always been the case, to be honest. But
more athletes who can get really in the air and then be caught in precarious situations because they're just that far in the air.
Well, soon our game will be completely automated and bionic, so we're just going to watch robots do it. So that's really the answer to our problem here.
Yeah. And no one would like that.
Hey, was that?
I wouldn't like watching a bunch of robots.
I don't think we have to worry about that in our lifetime.
Just back to the Jeremy Cameron incident quickly. Yep. I want to get your guys' opinions on how many weeks you think he will get and how many you think he should get. So I'll start with you, Busher.
How many did Fife get again?
He got
one.
He got the one. Yeah. Okay, I'd say Jazz probably 3, 4. Probably get 3, maybe 2.
Okay.
All the commentary at the moment is suggesting 5.
Yeah.
That's what all the experts are saying. I'm not a tribunal match review expert. It's not really an aspect of footy that interests me that much unless my players from my own team are in it. But it sounds like it's going to be 5. It's a tough one. Tom Jonas, I don't know if you guys remember the incident, but Tom Jonas a few years ago was playing West Coast and he knocked Gaff out and he got 6. It was a much worse incident. But I mean, there are like that Tom Jonas
one.
Was
it that much worse though?
Yeah, there was, because he had all the time in the world. Gaff went to market and was going back, and Jonas had the Gaff had just about landed, and Jonas had time to actually throw the hand back and knock him out.
I remember it, but I'm saying I feel like through the action of throwing his arm out, you have to treat them the same and have to treat Cameron as if
Cameron wasn't throwing his arm out.
If it was intentional.
Yeah, that's true.
If that's how they're going to treat it.
Yeah, that's true.
And he
did
throw his arm out. If you watch the replay, his head's that way, and he goes like that with his arm, which is like it's as bad as it gets for me. I love Jeremy Cameron, as a player, but and as a bloke.
I like how you clarify that. I love him just as a player.
He's a great fisherman. Him and Dev Smith. I've heard.
That's a euphemism.
But for me, I think he should get 5, even 6 weeks. But yeah, I think he will get 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
That Tom Jonas one, call me biased because the Eagles were playing, but I honestly think that was almost warranting criminal action. He literally just came up and king hit the guy because he took a mark. He wasn't even in the marking
contest. He did it with his elbow, didn't he? He went like that. I remember. He just straight like that to the temple.
And Gaff was just, it was quite scary. Gaff was just his days just on the floor unconscious. It's pathetic.
I saw a terrible one this year with Joel Selwood and James Sicily wrestling. And Selwood was lying on the ground.
Yeah.
And his head was to the side, and then Sicily came with his knee and just smacked him in the side
I remember
of the
there was a
head.
bit of a thing made about that, actually.
That one for me is so bad. I think you could potentially kill someone, no joke.
Yeah.
Like
Sicily's a dog.
Phil Hughes died from getting a ball to like the side of the head.
Yeah.
The thing about our justice system, and I include football justice system, is that it's always proportionate to the injury. So the fact that Selwood, from memory, wasn't like badly hurt, that means that Sicily gets away with it to some extent. But I don't think he got in trouble. Oh, did he? I mean, I remember.
I think he got a week.
Did he?
or
Okay,
something.
He didn't get much
It's not
trouble.
much, yeah.
But I think you should become a vigilante now. And
wow.
every AFL player that commits a really bad act on the football field and doesn't get their justice, only gets 1 or 2 weeks, you should track them down and
What, kneecap him, you reckon?
do something to them. Yeah.
It's a bit open-ended.
What's your name going to be?
I don't know, buddy.
Here we go.
Yeah, I bloody can't think of anything there, to be honest.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll just say my Hail Mondays before I do anything.
Yeah, say your Hail Mondays to
Yeah,
Pavlich and Paulich.
absolutely.
All right, boys. Well, while we're sort of on the topic of the AFL as a whole and the way it might go in the future, how do you guys feel about equalisation? Because there's been a bit of talk lately about particularly how bad Gold Coast are going, and we talked about how badly they're finishing games, and to some extent, there's reasons for it. They've had the massive travel burden. They obviously had the Commonwealth Games, couldn't play at home for the first half of the year.
Yeah.
They just look absolutely burnt out. But you can't deny the fact that they've won only like 25% of their games since their inception.
I'm all for equalisation. I feel like women should definitely get paid what men get paid for doing the same job.
Oh, that's a bit harsh on Gold Coast. They're not women.
No, I think the actions that they've... I don't know, sometimes I think these days that if a team spends 2 or 3 years at the bottom of the ladder, everyone's all of a sudden like, oh, we should change the system.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you look at Carlton, who's been there for almost the whole time we've been watching footy.
I think the Gold Coast thing is as much like an admin problem I just think they chose the wrong spot to do it still.
Yeah, I think Queensland's a place that just does not care about AFL
Yeah.
football.
If they had to put another side in, say, Melbourne, South Australia, Western Australia, and a team was doing this
Tassie,
bad, I feel
go
like
Tassie before
people
do it.
would
Tassie's,
care
I don't
more.
know.
More would be done about it.
The problem with Tassie is that it's got, what, 600? I don't want to quote it in case I get it wrong publicly. It's either 300,000 or 600,000 people. It's less than the size of, like, Perth, obviously.
But still enough, if they had their own team, you could build a solid fan base. If they had their own
I'm not
Hobart
too sure.
Hurricanes or whatever.
It's
they
very
call
hard to make that call.
Hobart Hurricanes.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's very
What you call it?
original.
Yeah, I know.
Why do people, when they're coming up with new like team names,
They
always
just go
make first the same?
HH. Yeah. It's only a recent thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
but it shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, it's a bit...
So yeah, I guess my point was on that was, would you care if Gold Coast folded? Personally, I'm much more of a sort of the type who wants to preserve the game the way it is, and I think a team folding, I'd probably be a bit sad.
you can't have an... I don't think you can have an odd number of teams in the competition.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
So if Gold Coast... I wouldn't want Gold Coast to fold, but I would be for potentially a relocation of Gold Coast to becoming, I don't know,
I think the AFL set their
the
sights
Canberra
on.
Suns or something like that. It doesn't have to be Canberra. just
GWS,
somewhere.
that's half the reason GWS is still afloat, because they've got Canberra as well
Yeah.
as Western
Yeah, I mean,
Sydney.
I just meant it as an example. I
Yeah.
wasn't saying move them to Canberra, but wherever you want to move them. But I
don't know
probably
where
would
it's
be
viable necessary. There's not that many places that would be viable for an AFL team, I don't...
You'd have to
Yeah.
expand into a footballing state, but I think the AFL are too committed to trying to compete with the rugby, compete in the rugby states.
You do really have to ask, well, what future long-term analysis was actually done by the AFL to show them that this team would work? Like, why? Did they do any of that research, or did they
They
just
must
say, oh, let's put a team in Gold Coast and we'll make it work?
will send them Gary Ablett on
Yeah,
a ridiculously big
exactly.
deal.
They must have. See, you know, I don't fully buy the fact that they've completely messed up by putting the wrong state, because we haven't seen them when they're good. We've only seen them when they're a terrible team, the worst of the competition. In any state, they would almost struggle. If
But are they ever going to get to that position
Well, that's the problem they face.
with the location? Because no one wants to play for them.
Yeah, no one wants to stay there.
leave.
No one wants to stay there. Same with Brizzy to an extent.
Brisbane seem, from at least my perception, they seem a lot further along that
Yeah,
process.
they're a lot further ahead from Gold Coast, but still ultimately.
But I guess it comes down to, do you want the AFL to assist Gold Coast so that they can prop themselves up, maybe make the finals for a few years, and then see where they go?
No.
Because I see GWS have got 20,000 members.
No, I don't want them to do that.
Yeah, you'd
Yeah.
rather just let
I
them...
feel like it's unfair.
I think you
Yeah,
could get
fair
away
enough.
with an uneven number of teams as well, because there's still an 8, and then
At least you can
there's teams that
introduce-
play people twice.
At least you can introduce a bye then once a week again for every team, and that could
Yeah.
be potentially the
Yeah.
the way to have
And it'd
more
make
games.
every other
in the
team
season.
better if they could pick the cream off the top of Gold Coast.
I suspect they might just
Thought
merge.
that was going somewhere very
Yeah.
different.
I suspect they would probably merge with Brisbane, is my guess.
Yeah.
Or Brisbane would absorb them, because Brisbane wouldn't become the Brisbane Suns, surely. Because
Yeah.
they've already become like the Bears, the Lions, and then the Suns. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We're talking a fair way down the
It'd be
track.
Brizzy Lions. It'd be all Brizzy.
What would you do then if you were Gold Coast? Like, I know, we kind of just said they probably won't, or you don't see them coming
If
back.
I was
up the
Gold
ladder.
Coast, or
Yeah.
what would I do if I was the AFL with
What would you
Gold
do if you were the
Coast?
Gold Coast? Aside from asking the money for the AFL for money or financial help,
What can you do?
list management wise, what would you try and do to
Try
get
and
out
get
of their
every
mess?
Queensland player that plays for an interstate club.
Are there many?
Not
yeah,
really.
exactly. No. So what
No.
can you do?
You don't have the. That's the difference between like a Carlton and Gold Coast. Carlton always have that you can come home to Victoria appeal to them.
I mean, people still
Ronaldo's been
berate
out
Gold
for-
Coast for the Fremantle deal, but they were pretty much forced into doing that. If they had have drafted, Davies Uniacke or Paddy Dow or Adam Chera, whoever, there's a high chance that player would have turned around in 2 years and said, I want to go back to Victoria.
That's true. Maybe not Brayshaw.
Well, we know that now with hindsight, but at the time,
Yeah,
do you
I
know
understand your
what I mean?
point.
They wouldn't have known that.
But yeah, Doc has had that added appeal with Brayshaw because he's got relatives
Yeah.
here.
And Lockie Weller, he hasn't gone great this year, but he does have a semi-proven track record that he's going to be at least, okay. And they're just crying out for a local person to build the team around. I think they're already talking now about Suns heavily trying to get Mav Weller now.
Yeah, I've heard talks of that.
That's the sort of thing I would try and do if I was them.
Yeah.
Just going back to that point, what I would do is I would target experienced players like a Sam Mitchell, Luke Hodge, who went to other clubs.
Yeah.
They're talking about McVeigh, actually, from Sydney. That's the big one they're linked to. The other one is Mark Murphy. I know that he's being chased by Brisbane and Geelong, but if they could lure him over for a couple of years on a massive contract.
Why would he leave, though?
Massive contract. I understand that it's not that tempting. Oh, I think he will leave Carlton, now that we've been that topic.
No,
But
I mean, why would he leave to Gold Coast?
You'd have to offer him
I
top
presume the
bench money.
reason he's captain of Carlton.
Yeah.
And I presume he's already on a very competitive salary.
True.
So the only reason surely he'd be leaving Carlton is to win a premiership, which
Yeah, you'd
wouldn't
think so.
happen at Gold Coast.
No, that's true. Again, you just have to talk him into being... I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with ideas, I guess.
Gold Coast have even tried that a couple of times. It hasn't panned out. Like Nick Malcheski, that did not pan out when they tried
I think
that sort of experience
I
campaign.
think something that GWS did a lot better than Gold Coast was their recruiting. They didn't recruit... GWS, the recruits they got when they formed are still playing now, most of them.
Scullies of the world.
Scullies, the Griffins, the Callan Ward,
Yeah.
even the ones that didn't work out, Reece Palmer, but all the guys they drafted, they knew could be there for a good 10 years and really bring through that young crop of players and sort of evolve as a team. Now, I feel like Gold Coast, they targeted already 100% established, maybe 27, 28-year-olds, but they're all expired now. They're gone. So they can't help Gold Coast now.
Even the kids they drafted are all gone too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are gone.
Some of them have turned out to be decent players. Caddy.
I don't know. For me
Only
personally,
Mira
I
Prestia.
think Gold Coast sold the farm to get 4 A+ players, and I think GWS sold the farm to get maybe like 7 or 8 A- players, and I think that's worked a lot better for them in the long run.
But again, you have to ask the question, did they have the choice? Did they actively seek out that strategy, or did they maybe seek a Phil Davis and Callum Ward and they didn't want to go play for the Gold Coast but wanted to play for GWS?
I think it seems like they just had their hearts set on a Gary Ablett, a marquee player, and they were going to give no matter what to get him.
Yeah, fair.
Which they did.
Yeah.
Mind you, GWS spent that money on a Scully. So there was still money.
Yeah, I don't think he was getting
millions
paid
plus.
as much.
Scully got
Was he?
He got $1 million a
like
year,
a
6 mil.
Yeah.
He got 6 mil over 6, and I think what did Ablett get? 1.2 or
Yeah, 1.2, 1.4-ish, I think, something like that.
Either way, we're in agreement that the players they got didn't serve them very well.
They got sold the farm for Riscatelli,
Yeah.
Jared Brennan.
Yeah, they just pinched a couple of Brisbane players that just faded into obscurity.
I mean, one I do like there is Pierce Hanley.
But he's gone down since he's left.
I think because of injury though. But he's a
Yeah, he
player.
has been injured this year.
But
That was actually a pretty good coup for him, actually, getting Pierce Hanley. Like an established good player.
they're the types of player they need to try and attract. The young 20s, semi-established players like Lockie Weller who can develop with the team.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree. All right, let's do it. So, boys, on the topic of all this talk about expansion and equalisation, what do you think is your ideal futuristic AFL landscape? How many teams do you want? Do you want it spread across states? Do you want conferences like they do in the NBA? How do you feel? Busher.
I'm pretty happy with it the way it is, really.
Okay.
Maybe if you could cull a couple of teams, maybe, and make the depth of talent on every team a bit better. Like, imagine if, like, for example, Gold Coast, who we were talking about before, got canned. Like, teams having a chance to get talents like Peter Wright, Tom Lynch. Well, Tom Lynch is probably gone anyway, but that's like all the top players there spread out among other teams. Like, if Carlton got a couple of those guys or something, that could help their prospects.
Yeah. I mean,
That
so you think less is more?
Yeah.
Because I'm actually thinking not necessarily in the next 5 years. I'm thinking 50 years.
I still think the real depth of talent would probably still be in like that. Maybe keep it the way it is in 50 years because the depth of talent could probably be the equivalent of what it would be now with one or two less teams.
I was going to say, I think it will improve. I think you have to accept that. Well, I think we have to accept that there's a possibility, or a good chance even, that the talent will be better because we're going to get better at developing talent. There's going to be more interest in the game in 50 years. The population will probably be double.
I think with the population increase, you could, in 50 years, you could have like 26 teams or something.
But how would that look? Would you like it to be conferences? Do you think we should have promotion relegation? Is that you breathing?
My chair.
Okay.
No, I don't like the idea of 2 leagues.
Yep.
With promotion relegation. I like the idea, or I don't really like the conference idea either, because I think that can be unfair at times.
Yeah,
that's true.
Same in the NBA, it's really
because
unfair.
the fifth, say like the East Conference and the West Conference. If you're splitting it like that, the 6th best team in the East Conference could be better than the 2nd best team in the West Conference.
Yeah.
So, and then if the best teams from each conference face each other, it's just, I don't know, it's unfair to me. I like the system with finals and everyone playing each other that they have now, but I'd like to see an increase in teams. I'd like to see a bigger roster, and I'd like to see a bigger season. So,
what's your ideal number of teams?
I mean, it's so hard to say because it depends how big the population is.
That's true. But in terms of the functionality of the system, for instance, I'll give you where I think we should have 20 teams.
20,
over the next, say, 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And then you could probably relocate a couple of Victorian sides, say in North Melbourne to Hobart, where they've already got a really good stance. The North Melbourne fans are probably going to hate that because they're going really well at the moment. And then you could easily have a 3rd South Australian team and a 3rd WA team.
The Beijing
I
Monkeys.
don't know how you get a 3rd WA team, for example, because I'd say people are pretty locked into their either West Coast or Freo. I don't know if there's enough people left to get behind a 3rd team.
It'll happen. I guarantee it'll happen. West Coast just passed 80,000 members.
I think they'll.
That's incredible.
At some point, they'll introduce a Peel AFL team.
Not a bad suggestion.
Bunbury, maybe. Because Bunbury's about 100,000 people these days, isn't
I think the logistics is a lot harder though. There's not an airport there and things like that. But I know I want to see more teams. It's hard to give an ideal amount, but I say like in 20 years, maybe 24 teams, 30 games a year, 2 buys, maybe shorter games to help the players out a little bit. Because at the moment, I still feel like compared to other sports, compared to NBA, soccer, there's not enough time in the year that football's on. Like,
yeah, we're left wanting a little bit, aren't we?
Yeah,
it's
6 months of the year we go without football.
I've still found NBA's a bit like that as well. It's not quite as bad. NBA's like
you have like 100 game seasons.
Yeah,
82, but they're all spread in like 5-6 months.
So the off season's only 2 or 3 months.
Off season's like now till end of October, which is 4 or so months.
Yeah.
AFL's only a couple months.
But then they have the summer league and stuff as well, where they have where people
no one
can watch
gets
that.
around summer league.
It's probably too hot to stretch.
I get around it because I'm a nerd, but summer league
might be too hot to stretch the footy season in Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another
not a factor.
consideration. The JLT is pretty stankin' hot.
Yeah,
JLT is.
Even like around
You'd have
5
to go-
game, I think I went to. The sun was in my face. It was like a 32-degree day. It was really uncomfortable.
I mean, you can get those days in winter though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it's just problematic. Obviously, playing.
I think
games
you'd have
in
to
November.
go deeper in the year rather than earlier. Yeah.
To November or October.
Yeah, well, into October or something like that. Yeah.
Stanky.
It is hard though, but I mean, in 30 years, there's a high chance that every stadium will be like Etihad with a roof with air conditioning.
Damn.
Still, we've only just had ours
This
built.
guy's living in the year 3000. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's not a bad point.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not 30 years, but
Yes, I don't see them sticking a roof on Optus, considering they just built it.
Well, in 30 years, you don't think they'll change Optus at all?
They will
in 30
change it,
years?
but they're not going to... A roof's a big operation for that sort of thing.
I think it's possible that they could do it in 30 years, to be honest.
If they were going to do it, they would have done it now, I reckon.
Yeah, but I don't know. 30 years is a long time, I feel like.
But still, Subiaco was there for God knows how long. They didn't do it.
Yeah, but it was so much harder in 1960 to decide to just put a roof on it, isn't it? Whereas
Still.
There needs to be a motivation to put the roof on, and that, for instance, would be a desire to play footy earlier or later in the year. But I don't know. Probably, that's very hypothetical. So maybe we'll just move on before you guys have a fight. Back to what we normally sort of talk about, which is current football events. A couple of weeks ago, I remember talking to you, Joycey, and you were feeling a little bit... What?
I feel like I'm about to get set up here.
No. I think 2 weeks ago you had your faith shaken in the way Fremantle was headed.
Yeah.
And Ross Lyon's tenure.
Yeah.
Do you feel any different now that they've had two really good games in a row?
Yeah, it's hard to say because Carlton were just so bad, and so were Adelaide. So I don't think they were anything special. I think my biggest worry came from the manner in which we were getting defeated interstate. So we were just getting flogged, and I couldn't see anything changing. But I don't know, in the last, say, month or so, because they've had the bye, they are looking a lot better, and we'll see how they go with a bit of confidence, I guess. What do you think, Busher?
Still, we're a team that fluctuates. Like, even last year, we had like that middle patch of the season when we looked decent, and other that we were terrible. Like this year, we've had like a good start. We've had a rough few weeks, and now we're starting to look decent again. Like, my opinion of the team hasn't changed that much throughout the year. Like, I've always expected us to be like a middle tier sort of team, like middle lower tier.
I think at the start of the year, I said I wanted 12 wins. Because 2016 we had 4, 2017 we had 8. So I thought a natural progression was for us to get close to 12 this year.
Would be somewhat off.
I don't think you'll quite reach 12.
Yeah, we'll be closer to 12 and 8 though.
So if we get around the mark, I will accept that. But I think if we only finished with 8 wins, I probably would still question whether Ross Lyon was the right man.
Next year, I reckon's the year. If we have an average year next year, flick him, probably at that
I
point.
mean, compared to like Carlton's started the rebuild after us, arguably, and like the way we've tracked it at the moment, we seem to be way ahead of them on the rebuild.
Yeah.
So I think we've.
Do you mean Carlton started before you?
Hey?
You mean Carlton started their rebuild before Fremantle?
Well, they only started sort of at the end of that, the 2016 season. They really started their new rebuild.
I suppose, yeah. They were still shit, didn't they?
Oh, they were still shit, but I think they had sort of were trying to still get there with a number of older
With,
players.
I think
Gibbs and
I think
Murphy.
of Malthouse
Yeah.
when he was kind of trying to flog a
Whereas
dead
the
horse.
sort of real, it's like a new rebuild, I'd say,
Yeah,
that
it
have
is.
Yeah.
embarked upon since 2016, and I think we're well ahead of them. I mean,
That's true.
I'm very hopeful as a Fremantle fan, but I think we really have nailed the draft last year. I think a lot of people put a lot of doubts on the draft class of last year, but the top 10 from last year, they seem to be
The quickest ever to all debut.
fairly flying.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I
the
didn't
top
know
10,
that.
I believe it was the quickest ever top 10 to all debut was
Yeah,
this year's.
I think that draft class might make people, especially the top. They said there wasn't the top talent, and I
That's
think
true.
all the top 10 that have come in have done pretty well. I mean, Stevenson's done well. We've seen Rayner do pretty well. Brayshaw, Chera have done well.
Dow just got a nomination.
Dow's done very well. Hunter Clark's playing every week and had some really good moments on the weekend.
Caulfield's was he leading the league in disposal efficiency, or was he up there?
He's up there. I
He's
think
only
he's
played
up
like
there.
2 games
Yeah.
though, hasn't he? Or
I
3
played a little
games?
bit more. I think like 7.
But
I
yeah,
could be wrong.
he looks good. The Swans, the Ranger dude, what's his name again? Richards, is it?
No, that's Bulldogs.
No, sorry, Bulldogs. Yeah,
Bulldogs, Ed Richards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he looks really good.
He's a player. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think this is going to be a really good draft. class.
We're very happy with Brander, just to throw that in there.
Oh, wow.
No, but we are. So
Yeah.
I think you make a great point. That's true. I think we obviously have to reserve judgment long term, but the first round is looking very strong. That is true.
Brander did slip in your guys' hands. He was projected to go high, wasn't he? He slipped right in.
A year before the draft, his potential top one.
Yeah.
Top one. Pick one. So,
I say that because something similar happened in the NBA draft last week. This guy, Michael Porter Jr., he'd had injury concerns and he slipped from a considered number 1 pick to pick 14, which is a pretty big slip by NBA standards.
that happened to us with Darling back in the day. He was meant to go pick 1 and then slipped to 26.
Yeah. I was like, wasn't there the alleged Eagles spreading rumours or something about him?
Honestly, I think he slid because they realised he's a 191 centimetre forward that can't play midfield.
I think
But he's a very good 191.
I think back
centimetre.
when he was getting drafted, I remember at the time there was a lot of
Gets in fights and stuff. Like rumours.
he was not seen as like a good character, which is, to be fair to him,
It's
he
funny.
hasn't really slipped up ever since he got
No,
drafted.
I think he seems like an absolute pussycat.
I've heard conspiracy theories that reckon Eagles spread this stuff so other teams wouldn't take him.
I've heard that too.
Conspiracy
To be
theory
fair,
type
though,
stuff. It's not like...
He was 18 and now he's
Yeah.
26. Like there's a big difference.
Yeah,
So-
I was a dickhead when I was 18.
Still a dickhead now.
Pretty much.
Nah. So-
We just took a massive tangent. What were we talking about? Oh, I was going to say, with Fremantle, it's funny. I think it's because I support West Coast, you support Fremantle. I noticed that my views on Fremantle are much more stagnant, and you obviously ride the waves a little bit more.
Yeah.
And even more so with West Coast, you're a
Vice
lot
versa,
more like
yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
I obviously ride a lot because I'm a very emotional
Yeah.
football fan. But for me, Fremantle, to me, they've always just been doing pretty much what I expected them to do this year.
I'm the same with you actually on that, and I'm a Freo fan, but I came into the season with expectations, and they've sort of not blown them out of the water, but not shat on them either.
They've got a young team who are copping big defeats away from home against good teams.
Yeah.
They're losing to top 8 teams
Exactly.
away from home is not a big deal. And the good thing is that they're getting some rising star quality games out of guys like Chera and Cox, and Brayshaw is probably it's a matter
He's
of
leading
time
the
before he
team in
gets one.
tackles.
We have to keep the young talent. We can't have Langdon turning around at the end of this season saying he wants to go, Chera saying he wants to go, Brendan Cox saying he wants to go. So
There's talk of Chara putting pen to paper. Has that happened yet? Or
no, it hasn't. But I've seen in the last few weeks they seem positive
Like
about
it's gonna
him
happen,
sticking around.
once he puts his pen to paper, like worst case scenario in a year or two he wants to go, but we've got him on a half decent contract so we can flip him for something good.
And Brendan Cox in the last month, he's just he's come from nowhere in the last month.
Yeah.
I was looking at his first think I showed you
17
guys
games.
first 17 games compared to Charlie Curnow. I think he was above him in pretty much every key stat apart from maybe tackles and disposals. But in terms of as a forward, he was killing Charlie Curnow.
Yeah.
That's true. I think Charlie Curnow has that X factor that people are drawn to, and obviously the media really want to pump up a struggling Carlton.
He is a good player.
He is,
I think,
yeah, he is. But yeah, Brendan Cox definitely has flown under the radar. I've always been a fan. I remember when they got drafted. He was drafted like
40s.
Yeah, it was like 43,
41 maybe.
It was a couple of I want to say 43, but I don't know. Yeah, it was a couple of picks after West Coast, and I was a little disappointed that he didn't come. So. Yeah, I've always been a fan, and I think it's even surprised me actually how quickly he's come on. So
yeah, I'm happy with him. I still want to see Taberner get back on the park as much as I've maligned him. We've looked different since Taberner went down. There's something I would say for Freo. He was important to the way we flow. Like, we looked a lot more fast-paced, offensive in the first 4 weeks, even when we have in our recent patch of success.
We just got to hope that his confidence hasn't been knocked by the injury and he goes back to sort of that square one spot where he was for so long.
Well, he wasn't there for that long. He was there for the first 5 games of the season. That's the first I'd really seen him
No, back to the square one point where he was, like, average. Which was pretty much the first 50 games.
Yeah, I want him back in this year.
But he knows that he can. Hopefully now he knows that he can actually have an impact and he can be an AFL player, and that should help him big time. I think if we can sort of build around Taberner Cox, I think that's not too bad to be fair. And
then McCarthy'd work because he's not a number 1 key forward. At best, he's a number 2, but ideally he's looked a number 3.
Bit harsh.
Like, literally, his best ever football was played when he had Jeremy Cameron and Patton as, like, the 2 other big targets.
Patton wasn't playing that year, to be fair. He was, like, number 2. It
was like
McCarthy.
To a certain extent, there was, like, they'd have other big guys down there as well. Like, even if Patton wasn't playing, they'd have a Lob down there for big patches. Even Tomlinson, I think they played him forward that year. I'm not sure. He's been all over the place.
But, no, it'll be interesting to see how he comes back. I think he was behind schedule last I saw, about a week ago. It was taking a bit longer than what they hoped, but the key position players, they always take a little bit longer to come back from those sorts of injuries. Yeah.
Boys, I'm going to bring up one last thing before we wrap up. I'm guessing you guys didn't see this tweet, but I want to ask you if you think this is a joke. This is Grant Thomas tweeted after you guys obviously saw Adam Treloar did both his hammies.
I was hoping this was going to be the Ronaldo to Western Bulldogs tweet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did see somebody on Nutties on AFL.
Just for some context, this guy wants the Western Bulldogs to have a pop at Cristiano Ronaldo.
Because of the success of all the other imports like Carmichael Hunt.
And thinks he would be a real good player on the half-forward flank for the Doggies.
Off from a big contract of $800K.
Yeah.
He gets that a bloody game, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think he gets that for 2 tweets now.
Yeah. That's true. No, I'm referring to a somewhat equally ridiculous tweet by Grant Thomas after Adam Treloar pinged both his hammies, as you would have seen against Carlton. Why has there been no discussion on Lockie O'Brien's involvement of Adam Treloar's hamstring injury? Lockie O'Brien was the guy chasing him.
I don't understand.
He says, why is nobody blaming Lockie O'Brien for his involvement in Treloar doing both his hammies?
Yeah, but I don't understand why.
Yeah, me neither. It's some sort of contributory... I'm going to have to edit that out.
Sorry.
It's as though he's got some contributory effect on Treloar pinging his hammies. Is there a duty of care now not to run too hard at someone with the ball so they don't ping their hamstring?
I mean, he's always been an idiot, Grant Thomas, hasn't he? So
that sticks out as one of the most ridiculous comments I've ever seen by a footy pundit, though.
Did he step on his ankles or anything?
No. Well, I watched the footage about 3 times after I saw that tweet.
Oh, God, I can't believe
He's a good 2 metres behind him, and when Treloar hits the ground, O'Brien keeps running past him.
Yeah, that's idiotic.
It's the most hilariously ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I actually clicked on it to see if he was saying ha-ha to trolling, but no evidence of that so far.
I think that would definitely have to be up there for the Robert Walls Award for 2018, I think.
Yeah, that's true. The Robert Walls Award, brutal, but fair.
Or the Hardy Walls Award.
That's why we do this podcast, so you don't have to listen to people like that.
Yeah.
We're the real experts.
Absolutely. I've barely played 10 games of football in my life, but I'm a bloody expert.
Don't say that.
And now, Busher, can you tell? Are you going to tell everyone about how you're going to enter the amateur boxing tournament for charity for the True Footy podcast?
Oh mate, what
The
am I
YouTube
bloody...
Boxers Association.
I was saying we're taking on bloody KSI.
Yeah, you're gonna fight KFC and Logan Paul.
Logan Paul, yeah.
Logan
Triple
Paul.
threat match. It's triple threat ladder match now.
You're fighting Dean Rioli,
Oh mate.
the old Essendon player.
You should do a call out video on our channel.
Oh mate.
Just be like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm calling you out, Logan Paul, for your suicide video. 13 views.
Give us a call out for Bushwhacks.
Oh mate.
I actually love the YouTube boxing scene. I hate to admit it. It's like admitting to the fact that I like Geordie Shore.
It is. It's so just like cringy, dramatic, fake, but it's
Yeah.
entertaining at the same time.
I love it.
The new WWE mate.
It is.
Yeah, except not quite.
Except
that
they
scripted.
actually hit each other.
Yeah.
Obviously. Well, WWE guys hit each other, but
Yeah, I was going to say they
Right.
probably actually hit about as hard as the WWE guys.
It's like
those guys belt the shit out of each other. It's just choreographed.
That's true. That's true. It's like watching reality TV. You just watch them because you hate everyone and you want them all to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. But anyway, all right, boys. Let's wrap this up. That was a good one.
Very nice.
Yep. Cool.
Sounds good.
Cool.